Imagine walking into a grocery store with just $50 and walking out with the power to flip your metabolism, stabilize your blood sugar, and unlock fat burning at the cellular level. That's not hype, that's biochemistry. Because here's the truth most people don't realize: keto is not expensive. Confusion is expensive. Poor planning is expensive. And believing you need fancy keto products is what drains your wallet, not the diet itself. Today, we're building the ultimate budget keto grocery list under $50, designed not just to fill your cart, but to change your metabolism. Let's start with the foundation: protein. They told you keto is expensive, that you need exotic ingredients, imported snacks, and shelves full of branded, low-carb products just to start burning fat. But what if that belief is the very thing keeping you stuck? What if the real cost isn't keto, but the confusion built around it? Because every time you reach for a packaged keto-friendly bar, every time you pay extra for something labeled low carb, you're not buying health. You're buying into a system designed to profit from your uncertainty. And while your wallet gets lighter, your metabolism stays trapped. Here's the biological truth your grocery store won't tell you: your body doesn't recognize labels. It responds to hormones. Specifically, one hormone that controls whether you store fat or burn it: insulin. When insulin is high, your body is locked in storage mode. Fat burning is essentially shut off. It doesn't matter how little you eat, how hard you try, or how much you exercise. As long as insulin stays elevated, your body is working against you. And what drives insulin higher than anything else? Refined carbohydrates, sugar, processed foods, the very items that dominate the cheapest aisles in the store. So people assume they're saving money, but metabolically, they're paying a price that compounds over time. Energy crashes, constant hunger, weight gain that feels impossible to reverse. This isn't a failure of willpower. It's a predictable hormonal response. Now, here's where everything changes. When you remove those insulin-spiking foods and replace them with simple, whole ingredients, foods that humans have eaten for generations, your body begins to shift. Insulin levels drop. And when insulin drops, something almost magical happens. Your body unlocks its own fat stores for fuel. This is not theory. This is well-established metabolic science. In a low insulin state, your body increases fat oxidation. It starts converting fat into ketones, an alternative fuel source that powers your brain and body with remarkable efficiency. Studies have shown that ketones provide a more stable energy supply than glucose, reducing fluctuations that lead to fatigue and cravings. And here's the part most people don't expect: hunger begins to disappear. Not because you're forcing yourself to eat less, but because your hormones finally allow it. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, stabilizes. Leptin, the hormone that signals fullness, starts working again. For the first time in years, your body isn't fighting you. It's cooperating. Now think about what that means financially. If you're no longer snacking every 2 hours, if you're no longer buying processed convenience foods, if your meals are simple, filling, and based on real ingredients, your grocery bill doesn't go up. It goes down. But the real savings go far beyond money, because the modern diet, cheap, processed, and addictive, comes with hidden costs: increased risk of type 2 diabetes, higher chances of obesity, greater likelihood of cardiovascular disease. These are not distant possibilities. They are outcomes directly linked to chronically high insulin and poor metabolic health. And managing these conditions, that's where the real expense begins. Medications, doctor visits, long-term complications. Compare that to a cart filled with eggs, ground beef, cabbage, butter, simple foods that stabilize blood sugar and reduce insulin. Foods that don't just feed you, they heal the underlying problem. This is why the idea that keto is expensive doesn't hold up under scrutiny. It's not keto that costs more. It's the lifestyle we've normalized. A lifestyle built on convenience over biology. A lifestyle where food is engineered to be addictive, not nourishing. A lifestyle where people eat more, crave more, and feel worse, all while spending less per item but more over time. Keto flips that equation. It replaces constant consumption with strategic nourishment. It turns food from a source of instability into a tool for control. And control is the most valuable currency when it comes to your health. Because when your blood sugar is stable, your mind becomes clear. Brain fog lifts, focus sharpens. Ketones provide a clean burning fuel for your brain, and many people report improved cognitive performance within days of entering ketosis. This isn't just about weight, it's about function. Your energy stops swinging between highs and crashes. Your mood stabilizes. That afternoon exhaustion that once felt inevitable, it fades. And all of this comes not from expensive supplements or specialty products, but from aligning your food with your biology. So the next time you hear someone say keto is too costly, understand what they're really saying. They're looking at the price of products, not the value of outcomes. They're seeing the surface, not the system, because the truth is, the most powerful shift you can make doesn't require more money. It requires better decisions. Choosing eggs over cereal, choosing real meat over processed snacks, choosing foods that lower insulin instead of spiking it. These choices may seem small in the moment, but biologically, they are massive. Each one moves your body closer to fat burning, closer to stability, closer to freedom. And that's the word most people overlook. Freedom from constant hunger, freedom from energy crashes, freedom from a metabolism that feels broken. You don't need expensive foods to achieve that. You need understanding, you need consistency, and you need the willingness to challenge what you've been told. Because once you do, once you experience what it feels like to run your body on fat instead of sugar, you realize something that changes everything. The real luxury isn't expensive food. It's a body that works the way it was designed to. They told you there's a complicated path to metabolic health, that you need expensive supplements, specialty powders, and curated keto kits to fix your body. But when you strip away marketing, confusion, and noise, what you're left with is almost uncomfortable in its simplicity. A handful of real foods, not engineered products, not lab-made substitutes, just ordinary grocery items that, when combined correctly, can fundamentally shift how your body produces energy. Because your metabolism doesn't respond to complexity, it responds to signals, and every item in a budget keto grocery list is not just food, it's a signal being sent to your hormones, your mitochondria, and your brain. Start with something deceptively simple: eggs. In the modern world, eggs have been misunderstood, debated, and at times unfairly demonized. Yet biologically, they remain one of the most complete nutritional packages available at the lowest cost. Inside a single egg, you find high-quality protein, essential fats, choline for brain function, and a near-perfect amino acid profile that supports cellular repair. But the real power of eggs is not just what they contain, it's what they prevent. When you eat eggs instead of a high-carb breakfast, you dramatically reduce the insulin spike that would normally follow a bowl of cereal, toast, or processed breakfast foods. And that matters more than most people realize, because insulin is not just a blood sugar regulator, it is the master storage hormone. When insulin rises, your body shifts into storing energy instead of using it. Fat burning pauses, hunger signals often increase later in the day. Energy becomes unstable. Eggs do the opposite. They stabilize the morning metabolic response, creating a foundation where your body can actually access stored fat for fuel. Now, build on that foundation with something equally powerful: ground beef. At first glance, it may seem basic, ordinary, even unremarkable. But physiologically, ground beef is one of the most efficient tools for nutrient density and satiety per dollar. It delivers iron, zinc, vitamin B12, and high-quality fat, nutrients that are critical for mitochondrial energy production. Your mitochondria are the tiny engines inside your cells responsible for converting fuel into usable energy. When they are undernourished, fatigue becomes constant, brain fog becomes normal, cravings increase. Ground beef helps reverse that by providing both the fuel and the raw materials your cells require. And there's another critical effect: satiety. Protein and fat together trigger powerful satiety hormones that tell your brain you are full. This is not willpower. This is endocrinology. When these signals are strong, the constant drive to snack begins to fade naturally. No discipline required, just biology adjusting itself. Now introduce a source of marine nutrition: canned tuna and sardines. These are among the most underrated foods in modern diets. Sardines in particular are a dense source of omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins. Tuna provides lean protein and essential amino acids. Omega-3 fats play a critical role in reducing systemic inflammation, and inflammation is increasingly recognized in research as a key factor in metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and impaired fat metabolism. When inflammation is high, cells become less responsive to insulin. This leads to higher circulating insulin levels, which further locks the body into fat storage mode. Omega-3 rich foods help interrupt that cycle. And here is something rarely discussed. Omega-3s also influence brain signaling. They support neurotransmitter balance, which can affect mood stability and cognitive clarity. In simple terms, your brain begins to feel more stable when your cells are less inflamed. Now bring in vegetables, but not the trendy, expensive kind. Focus instead on the most affordable metabolic tools available: cabbage, spinach, and zucchini. These foods are not chosen for taste trends or social media aesthetics. They are chosen for function. Cabbage is rich in fiber and contains compounds that support gut health. The gut is not just a digestive system, it is a signaling hub that communicates directly with metabolism, immunity, and even mood regulation. Spinach provides magnesium, potassium, and folate, electrolytes and micronutrients that become critically important when carbohydrate intake is reduced. Many of the symptoms people call keto flu are actually electrolyte imbalances, not carbohydrate withdrawal itself. When insulin drops, the kidneys excrete more sodium and water. Without replenishment, fatigue and headaches can appear. Spinach and similar vegetables help partially restore this balance naturally. Zucchini offers volume with minimal metabolic cost. It allows meals to feel larger and more satisfying without increasing blood glucose. This is important because satiety is not just hormonal, it is also physical. The stomach and digestive system respond to volume and fiber, creating mechanical fullness signals that reinforce hormonal satiety. Now add one of the most essential energy tools in ketogenic nutrition: butter or ghee. In a carbohydrate-based metabolism, fat is often misunderstood, but in a low insulin state, dietary fat becomes a primary energy source. Butter provides a stable, efficient fuel that does not spike blood sugar or insulin. This stability is what allows energy levels to remain consistent throughout the day. Instead of cycles of high energy followed by crashes, fat metabolism produces a smoother energy curve. Many people describe this as steady energy, but biologically, it is the result of ketone production and fat oxidation. When the body is adapted to this state, it becomes metabolically flexible, able to efficiently use fat for fuel instead of relying on constant glucose intake. Cheese adds another layer of practicality. It is calorie-dense, highly palatable, and rich in fat and protein. From a behavioral standpoint, this matters because sustainability in nutrition is not just about physiology. It is also about adherence. Foods that are satisfying reduce the psychological drive to seek alternatives. In simpler terms, when meals are satisfying enough, the brain stops searching for more food. Then comes a controversial but practical component: peanuts or peanut butter. While not perfect keto due to their carbohydrate content, peanuts represent a budget-friendly source of fats, calories, and protein. In real-world nutrition, sustainability often requires flexibility. For many individuals transitioning away from processed foods, peanuts serve as a bridge food, helping reduce dependence on sugar-heavy snacks while maintaining affordability and accessibility. The key, of course, is portion control and awareness. Even within a low-cost framework, metabolic stability depends on balance. Finally, there is an ingredient so simple it is often ignored entirely: salt. Yet sodium is one of the most critical electrolytes in human physiology. When carbohydrate intake decreases and insulin levels fall, sodium excretion increases. This can lead to temporary symptoms such as fatigue, dizziness, or weakness. These symptoms are often misinterpreted as failure or inability to adapt, when in reality they are simply electrolyte depletion. Reintroducing adequate salt supports nerve function, hydration balance, and cellular energy transport. In clinical observations of low carbohydrate adaptation, electrolyte management is often the difference between success and failure. Now step back and see the entire system. Eggs stabilize insulin response in the morning. Ground beef builds metabolic strength and satiety. Sardines and tuna reduce inflammation and support cellular health. Vegetables restore electrolytes and digestive balance. Butter provides stable energy fuel. Cheese enhances satiety. Peanuts offer affordability and practicality. Salt maintains physiological function during adaptation. Individually, these are simple foods, but together they create a metabolic environment that shifts the body away from constant glucose dependence and toward fat utilization. And that shift is not just about weight, it is about energy stability. It is about cognitive clarity. It is about reducing the biological noise of hunger, cravings, and crashes that dominate modern eating patterns. What makes this approach so powerful is not sophistication, it is consistency. Because your metabolism does not change from one perfect meal, it changes from repeated signals over time. And every time you choose these foods instead of processed alternatives, you are reinforcing one message at a cellular level. You do not need constant sugar to function. You do not need frequent eating to survive. You can run on a more stable, more ancient, more efficient fuel system. And once your body understands that message fully, something remarkable happens. Food stops controlling you, and your biology finally starts working with you instead of against you. For most of human history, your body was never designed to depend on sugar every few hours. It was designed to survive scarcity, to adapt, to switch fuels, to burn stored fat when food wasn't available. But something changed in the modern world, and not in your biology, in your environment. Now you wake up to carbohydrates, you snack on carbohydrates, you reward yourself with carbohydrates, and slowly, without realizing it, your metabolism is trained into a single identity, a sugar burner. And a sugar burner is always on edge because glucose is a short-term fuel. It rises fast, burns fast, and crashes fast. That means every meal becomes a cycle of spikes and drops. You eat, you feel energy, then you crash, then you crave again. This is not random, this is physiology. Every spike in blood glucose triggers insulin. And insulin is not just a blood sugar hormone, it is a storage hormone. Its job is to take energy out of the bloodstream and move it into storage. And when insulin is elevated repeatedly throughout the day, your body is essentially locked in storage mode. That means fat burning is suppressed, not slightly reduced, not slowed down, suppressed. Because insulin directly inhibits lipolysis, the breakdown of fat stored in your fat cells. So even if you are eating less, your body may still refuse to access its own energy reserves. This is one of the most misunderstood mechanisms in weight regulation. People think fat loss is about eating less, but biologically, it is about lowering insulin long enough for your body to unlock stored energy. And when that happens, something fundamental shifts. You stop being dependent on food for energy every few hours. Your body begins to tap into a far more stable fuel source, stored fat. This is where ketosis begins to emerge. When carbohydrate intake is reduced significantly and insulin levels remain low, your liver begins converting fatty acids into ketone bodies. These ketones are not a backup system. They are a highly efficient fuel source for the brain and body. In fact, research shows that the brain can derive a significant portion of its energy from ketones, and in some cases, ketones provide a more stable energy supply than glucose itself. Unlike glucose, which causes rapid fluctuations in energy availability, ketones produce a smoother, more sustained energy curve. This is why people often report mental clarity on low-carb diets. It is not placebo, it is neurochemistry. The brain is no longer riding the roller coaster of sugar spikes and crashes. It is operating on a steady metabolic signal. Now, imagine what that means for your daily life. No mid-morning crash that forces you to reach for snacks. No afternoon exhaustion that feels like hitting a wall. No evening cravings that feel uncontrollable, because these are not character flaws. They are metabolic consequences of unstable fuel use. And once the fuel changes, the behavior changes. One of the most dramatic effects of this metabolic shift is appetite regulation. When insulin is chronically high, appetite hormones become dysregulated. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, increases more frequently. Leptin, the satiety hormone, becomes less effective. This creates a state where the body is constantly signaling for more food, even when energy stores are sufficient. But when insulin drops and ketone production increases, these signals begin to normalize. Hunger becomes less frequent. Cravings lose intensity. The constant mental background noise of what's next to eat starts to fade. This is not suppression of appetite. This is restoration of hormonal balance. And that distinction matters deeply because suppression requires effort, restoration requires alignment. Now consider what happens over time. As your body adapts to fat as its primary fuel source, metabolic flexibility improves. This means your body becomes efficient at switching between fuel sources when needed, but is no longer dependent on constant glucose intake. In metabolic health research, loss of flexibility is a key feature of insulin resistance. The body becomes stuck in sugar dependence, energy regulation becomes unstable, fat storage increases. Reversing that state requires consistent exposure to low insulin conditions long enough for cellular signaling to reset. This is why consistency matters more than perfection. Even small repeated changes, like reducing refined carbohydrates, stabilizing meal composition, and avoiding constant snacking, begin to shift the metabolic baseline. Over time, insulin exposure decreases, fat oxidation increases, and the body gradually relearns how to access stored energy efficiently. But there is another layer most people never consider: the emotional impact of glucose instability. Rapid blood sugar fluctuations are not just physical events, they affect the brain. Studies have linked unstable glucose levels to irritability, anxiety-like symptoms, and reduced cognitive performance. When glucose drops rapidly, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline increase to compensate. This is why people often feel hangry or emotionally reactive between meals. It is not personality, it is survival chemistry. When glucose becomes the dominant fuel, emotional stability becomes tied to eating frequency. But when ketones become the primary fuel source, brain energy supply stabilizes. Many individuals report a reduction in emotional volatility, improved focus, and a more consistent mood state. This is because ketones do not trigger the same hormonal stress response that glucose fluctuations do. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The modern diet keeps most people in a chronic state of metabolic instability. Frequent eating, frequent insulin spikes, frequent energy crashes. And over time, this contributes to insulin resistance, a condition where cells become less responsive to insulin, forcing the pancreas to produce even more of it. This creates a vicious cycle. Higher insulin leads to more fat storage leads to more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance leads to even higher insulin levels. And this cycle is deeply connected to modern chronic conditions, including type 2 diabetes, obesity, and even cardiovascular disease. These are not isolated diseases. They are often manifestations of long-term metabolic dysfunction. The breakthrough comes when that cycle is interrupted, not with extreme restriction, not with starvation, but with fuel substitution. When carbohydrates are reduced and replaced with fats and proteins, insulin demand decreases. The body is no longer forced into constant storage mode, and slowly, insulin sensitivity can improve. This is where fat loss becomes a side effect rather than a struggle, because once insulin drops consistently, the body naturally begins accessing stored fat for energy, and that is when weight loss becomes more stable and less effortful. But perhaps the most important shift is psychological. When your body is no longer demanding food constantly, your mental space expands. Food stops being the center of attention. Decision fatigue decreases. Daily life becomes less dominated by eating schedules and cravings. You are no longer planning your day around the next snack. You are functioning with energy stability that does not require constant maintenance. And that is the real transformation. Not just weight loss, not just fat burning, but the restoration of metabolic independence, a state where your body is no longer reactive to every meal, but responsive, stable, and efficient. And it all begins with a simple realization: you are not broken. Your metabolism is not broken. Is It has simply been trained by years of dietary signals to rely on sugar. And when you change the signal, you change the system, slowly but completely.